even though I'm going to, you know, things will hopefully be a little more refined than normal, my process doesn't really change a whole lot, at least at this stage. You know, finding that upper and lower torso, that's what you need to find, regardless of how detailed you'll end up going on a drawing. Okay, so there's roughly, the knee is coming to about here and then going down this way. Okay, let's get in a center line so we understand the axis of the form. Something like so. Okay, and we can see, or we can visualize that kind of cutout for the neck. The manubrium is here, and the clavicle is obviously coming up this way, where it's going to meet up with the humerus on this side. Not quite as extended, maybe something like that. Cool. Okay, so we're going to come from the manubrium, we're going to come down the sternum. As we come to the end of the sternum, not that we really see it here, but there's a little thing called the xiphoid process, which is essentially where the arch of the rib cage is. But what it does kind of, if you can even get a sense of where the end of the sternum is there, you can get a sense for where the xiphoid process would be. So right now, just very loosely, something like so. Some poses it helps more than others, but there is a subdivision that's worth talking about, which is what, you know, some people call like the tuxedo bib, or what is essentially the division of the breastplate from the bone to the cartilage. So you have the bone coming around, and then this section in here is made up of cartilage, and it's where the chest really gets quite flat, right? So we kind of get this kind of idea, and then coming around the form like so, right? So it's kind of, sometimes it's nice to put this in. It also helps at least start that journey of the subdivision between the side of the form and the front of the form here, right? Something like this. Okay. I know I'm working very lightly right now, but trust me, it's necessary. Okay, we'll come down. We can kind of see that the oblique, oh sorry, not the oblique, well, I guess the oblique too, the iliac crest is coming around the form this way. Now his knee is actually, and this leg is in front of this idea, sitting in here, the thigh is sitting about here, and then we have the calf coming in here, just so you can visualize what's being obscured from our view. Something like that, give or take. Anyway, we come down, we can't see it, we know the navel would be about here. So we got the rib cage coming down this way, coming into the oblique, and then down into the iliac crest here. And then we come down to the gluteus, and then the buttock down here, gluteus maximus from the gluteus medius. Just kind of see the gluteus medius sitting just in this region right here. Okay. Something like that. This leg, just as a point of reference, is kind of coming out this way. Knees about here. All right, let's just find the overall. You'll notice I draw these kind of circles that are going around the form to help me understand the relationships of things in space, right? Okay, so that's good enough for now. Okay, so let's find what's going on with these arms. Clavicle's coming up here. Head of the humerus is going to be sitting right about here, where it meets up with the clavicle and the scapula. From the back, we have this little thing here, if we could see it, called the acromion process, coming off the scapula, which is back here. Actually, it's probably more kind of sitting in this area if we could see it. And this arm is coming towards us. Once again, immediately want to try and find where there's any perspective or foreshortening, something like that. Excuse me. We have the latissimus, which is obviously attached to the humerus and is coming down this way. And that's sitting in here. It's actually then traveling down the back and meeting up kind of side, backish of the form. But this gives us at least the overall general volume of that, right? There's a little muscle in here called the coracobrachialis, which we just kind of see a hint of in here. So if you're trying to decipher what it is that, you know, when you see a lot of busyness, that's kind of what's going on there. Coming around. Where elbow is roughly about here. That will do us for now at least. Sternocleidomastoid muscles coming in this way. The neck and then the trapezius, we can see the pectoral muscle, which once again is attached to the humerus, coming back from the other side of the form there. Coming in, coming down this way. And then just very roughly, his face, his head, sitting in this area here. Okay. Get us in the ballpark, won't it? So let's look at the pectoral muscles. So we have the sternum coming down. Just above the arch of the rib cage, between the fifth and the sixth rib, is where the pectoral muscle kind of connects with the, or at least the lower section of the pectoral muscle connects to the rib cage. So that's sitting in here, and then it's kind of pulling something like this. Kind of comes to the edge of this this front plate, right? So this subdivision line we put here is actually really useful for understanding where its connection point gets a little looser, so to speak. Head of the humerus, about here. Something like so. This arm is coming out this way. And we have, okay, so we have the volume of the arm. So let's just kind of get a sense for that. It's going to be sitting roughly in here. Something like so. Once again, the pectoral muscles coming from the other side of the form here. And then it's kind of coming down this way. So something like that, right? The bicep, which is attached to both the scapula and, the bicep has two heads, right? And it's attached to both the top of the humerus and the interior head. It's actually attached to something called the coracoid process, which is also on the scapula. It's a little process that sticks out kind of underneath just where your armpit is. So that's attaching in 2 points. So anyway, we got biceps coming down this way, like so. And something like that. That little coracobrachialis, it's right there. Then there's another muscle that sits underneath the bicep, and its form is not so dissimilar to the bicep, called the brachial muscle, and that's the brachialis. We can't really see it in this pose, but sometimes you'll get hints of it, like here or in here. We've got other poses where, or even actually on this arm, it exposes itself a little more. So we'll look at that. Tricep coming up this way, then coming into the very squarish joint of the elbow, right? Remember, joints tend to be squarer. Areas between joints tend to be rounder, generally speaking, right? Okay, so that pectoral muscle coming this way, and then we can actually see the deltoid is kind of competing for space here, sitting in here and coming down the form that way, something like that. Right. Okay, on this side, yeah, bicep sitting in here. Something like that. You can get a hint of that coracobrachialis, and then the brachial muscle, you can actually see it up here as we come up to the elbow. Tricep is coming up this way. Then this forearm is coming this way, something like that. You guys can see that okay, I hope. All right. You know, serratus muscles are something that I'm always a little bit hesitant to put in too much detail. So the serratus are also attached to the scapula back here, but they come across the form, they fan out like fingers coming across the ribs. I'm sure you've all seen them. They kind of look, you can get them confused for ribs, you know, if you don't know what you're looking at. But they're sitting in this section here, just as an idea, right, coming down this way. So it's good that we understand what it is that we're looking at. Okay, so things are getting very smudged and very faint, but anyway, we'll fix that. Can't see it, but if we could, the iliac crest obviously coming down this way to where the asus, which would be about here, coming across the form. So this oblique be sitting about here, coming up and kind of meeting up, as I said, with that kind of bib line type idea, or at least best think of it like as the turn of form line, right? Something like so. Sternocleidomastoid muscle coming up this way, his ear sitting about there. Okay. And actually, this hand is coming across the form here. Probably not going to get too much into hands today. Let's see. We'll just at least block it out. Forearm sitting in there. Something like so. How are we doing? 13 minutes. All right. So, with all that said, obviously there can be refinement to all of this. Let me just add in the latissimus, obviously connected to the humerus on this side. And that latissimus is coming down this way and then going behind the form of the rib cage right about there. Right, and then we can see it, we get a peek of the oblique sitting in here. Something like that. Yeah, don't know, as I said, I don't know if I really want to get too much to this, at least on this pose, but we've got the very box-like area where the femur and the tibia meet. So we can kind of think of that in those terms. You can even kind of sketch in where the tibia is here, and obviously then, you know, we've got the patella, the kneecap sitting in here kind of area. So, okay. So I'm going to go in now and just start tying down a little bit. I'm going to lose this glove. I think it was a bad idea. We'll see. Okay. I'm going to start on this side of the drawing primarily because I don't want to make the drawing any dirtier than it already is or has to be. But there's no right or wrong place to start on this tie down stage, for me at least. You know, you tend to develop biases of where you start, just like with time and experience. But there's no formula for which is the right way or the wrong way, if you know what I mean. Okay, so let's get in. Latissimus coming in like so, something like that. Manubrium is there. Can't see the clavicle all the way, but we can definitely see where the pectoral muscle's doing this and then bunching up and meeting with the deltoid here. And on this subject, on this model, you can even see the separation in the deltoid at the different heads of the deltoid, which is really nice. So we'll just kind of suggest the bicep coming in here, something like so, and just redefine this tricep area. Something like that. Forearm. And coming from here, coming up this way. Something like that. Okay. Let's move across to this side of the form. So, clavicle is a little bit more defined on this side, coming up, and then very quickly you see the mass of the deltoid kind of reveal itself there. Bicep coming in, sitting in there. Something like that. And coming down and pectoral muscle, we have this like kind of triangular shape sitting in here, where the left and the right side are separated. Something like so. Okay. I'm going to switch across the form now. I'm actually going to come over to the oblique on this side, which I know is about here. And for those of you with the reference, look how angular some of these lines are even on the model. I know I'm a broken record, but you know, one thing I see so many people do is draw too many rounds when straights are such an important part of our process and our language for describing form. And you just see a lot of people, especially those obviously starting out on their journey, where they represent everything as a sphere or a cylinder, right? And everything gets very soft and very round and very kind of just, it loses tension, right? When you can put straights and angles in against curves, then you create a lot of tension for your drawing, you know. Okay, we can see that division of the latissimus and the rib cage coming up this way. Then we actually have, on the reference, we have a lovely pocket of light and tone, which is helping describe this form in here. Nathan asks, have I ever considered doing streams about concept art and that type of thing? Yeah, I have. People are going to be sick of hearing. I've got lots of plans for videos and crossing over into different things like animation, design language for animation, that type of thing. All stuff I want to get to. I guess it's, you know, for me, figure drawing is just like it's the thing I enjoy doing for myself the most, so it's where my default attention tends to rest. But you know, at almost every animation studio I work at these days, I inevitably end up teaching on some level to someone on the team, you know, concepts that relate to like design language and that, which all of what we do in these sessions actually translates so much. But it would be nice to maybe do streams that focus on design language for animation, or you know, concept art and that type of thing. Coming down to the ankle, sitting down here. Something like so. Now I would say, for those of you drawing along, and those of you who have the reference, this is going to be incredibly difficult to lighten tone in the way that it's presented in the reference, the two light sources. There's a potential for real struggle in trying to describe that. I think it's best, in the interest of the amount of time we have for these, and not running too long on each one, that we maybe we keep these drawings diagrammatical, which I tend to do when I'm doing anatomy studies for the most part anyway. And for those of you who don't know this, you know, I consider there to be, like, well, not just me, but I think there's, like, you know, two forms of approach to this. There's diagrammatical, which is what this is, where we're using line to describe form. Essentially, there's very little tone. There's a little bit of half tone in here just by virtue of the way I'm drawing. But, you know, you have the diagrammatical drawing and then you have tonal drawing. For me, at least, all tonal drawings generally start as diagrammatical drawings. I know there are some artists that work with charcoal, they like to go straight into the tonal side of things. And they, you know, the diagrammatical process is more of an internal kind of conversation rather than something they express on the page. But I like to put them both in. All right, I'm not going to describe that leg any more than that. But okay, I think that as a study for what I wanted to accomplish here, I think we were all right. I think we kind of got in the ballpark. I think it might take time to move on to the next pose. As I said, I don't want to belabor drawing everything through every drawing, because it takes me out of focus of what it is that I actually want to kind of focus on a particular session. So I think I'll call it a wrap on that one, and that's 25 minutes. So seems reasonable.